Hello, everybody. Eloise here, and I am here today with the beautiful and wonderfully talented Tracey Clark. Hello, Tracey.
Hi, Eloise. Thanks for having me.
Hey, we've been talking about doing this video for quite a while,
We certainly have.
and I am so excited to get talking about Tracey's new course today. So, if you're a therapist, time to listen up because this might rock your world. So, Tracey, do you want to tell us what your new course is called? Should we do a drum roll?
Sure. Yeah, I'm excited to launch this new course. It's called Beyond Technique, and the focus is on professionalism and the art of practice. That's really designed for anybody who's in the practice of healthcare.
Cool. Excellent. So it's really applicable to anybody who is a therapist or in healthcare or
Absolutely. I designed the class for Western and Eastern approach. Everybody from a medical doctor to manual therapist to energy therapist. Really, these are concepts that apply regardless of the modality and go beyond your technique, hence the name, to the tools of practice that really relate to each and every one of us in healthcare.
beautiful. Now, Tracy, do you want to give us a little background on you? Because, I mean, what you cover is quite phenomenal.
Certainly. I started in healthcare in 2007, and I came into this work actually not from a medical background. I was a professional dancer and was seeking out answers in my own health, and it led me on a journey of professional healthcare. But throughout the last decade, I continued my studies through Eastern medicine, Western medicine. I'm a manual osteopath. I'm a senior BodyTalk instructor. And through bringing all of these tools together, I continued into a PhD in integrative medicine and now hold a doctorate and PhD in that field. So it's been a long journey the last 10 years of studying myself, but it's just been continued inspiration that took me to this point in time. And I now have a multidisciplinary practice. My practice at the moment, in fact, the last 2 years, has been entirely remote. So I've been working in an energetic capacity as I lecture internationally, and the travels made it very difficult for me to keep an in-office practice. And it's been a fascinating journey to see just how much we can achieve energetically across distance. And boy, if there's ever been a time where we need that, it's right now. So I feel, constantly inspired by this work myself in my own practice.
Yeah, it is phenomenal what we can do at distance. I know I've been doing mainly distance for the last 2, 3 years as well, and it's beautiful work, and it's great to be able to reach people at this time.
It certainly is.
Yeah, such a gift. So, do you want to give us some background as to how this course came about? What kind of sparked your idea for it?
Absolutely. I think there's a few different avenues of inspiration really that went into this class. I know when I started my BodyTalk practice or my energy medicine practice initially, I didn't come into this field with any professional training. I was, as I mentioned, I was an artist. I was coming into the field of healthcare, and although I had some amazing tools when I took classes, I was learning techniques, I was learning the modality, but not necessarily the nuances of having a healthcare practice. And as I continued on in my journey, I was introduced to many quantum concepts and how they applied into healthcare and healthcare practice. And I, was quite fascinating by these concepts like observation and how the observation of the practitioner or the observation of the client influenced the outcome. I was introduced to concepts like entanglement and the relationship that's formed between a practitioner and a client. And eventually my dissertation actually was on the impact of these principles in practice, and rather there existed an opportunity for healing beyond the actual treatment. So, I was fascinated by that relationship dynamic between the practitioner and the client, but also how, as practitioners, we can incorporate these ideas, the incredibly powerful influence of placebo and nocebo, and how that affects the client's outcome. And I understood that there was so much more going into a practice than I was either taught in class or that many health practitioners know. And I think the other reason I was really compelled to create this course is because I've taught for the last 11, 12 years internationally, and I've watched students who have amazing techniques and amazing tools in their hands and yet struggle to get their practice off the ground. And I realized there was a real gap in training in terms of these skills that went beyond our actual treatment. So, I felt compelled to help my students to learn how to set up a successful practice from beginning to end, from the point of hello to the client to the end of their treatment protocol, is how to ensure that every aspect of our practice is designed to support health and healing. And, there's some incredible dynamics that are at play right from the moment a client makes an appointment. And I also understood that these were tools that every healthcare practitioner could utilize. It didn't matter what field of medicine we're in. And they, in fact, are directly impacting our outcome. So a lot of times can be undermining our own tool if we don't know how to work with that conversation between practitioner and client, from the intake, from the environment that we create and how that impacts our client, even more importantly, communication. How we communicate as a practitioner, what is the outcome for the client? And I talk about things like evaluation because, I could see that Western medicine is used to using evaluation as diagnostics, but in fact, there's ways of measuring change instantaneously in a session that shows not only the client, but the practitioner that ongoing change and healing that's happening. And, there's science behind that. When a client observes healing, they begin to believe that it's possible. And as they believe that it's possible, now we're starting into a new journey of possibility for them. And, there's so many tools that we can empower our own clients to become their own observers of health and to continue to heal beyond the session. And those were things that I never learned when I was going into my initial training, and I felt were so valuable for every practitioner in a professional practice.
Yeah, that's great. Because having trained, as a healer myself, it like you learn the techniques, and might learn how to explain a technique to someone, but there's a complete different kind of science to the whole relationship and how you're viewed by the client, that professionalism. And it's something from my previous backgrounds I already kind of knew, so I knew how to bring that. But you see people just struggling to get the ball rolling with their clinic, and quite often it's because of that. There's elements missing, and it sounds like you're going to be covering a lot of that. So,
absolutely, I agree. I really felt like there was a gap there, and it's fascinating when we start to study quantum physics and we apply that to our own lives and we apply that to healing. We understand that there's such a powerful opportunity to simply just shift our focus. Rather, it's the practitioner and how we look at our client, understanding that how we look at our client influences what we see. And in fact, can continue to collapse the potential of symptom. Whereas if we have the opportunity and the understanding of how we observe and how we communicate, can create an opportunity for healing, and then relay that to our client. But, even more importantly, I think you touched on it there, Eloise, the ability to communicate what we're doing from a simplistic standpoint that allows the client to observe change as they go forward is so impactful. And it is an area that we oftentimes are not trained how to use properly. And not to mention all the small components of a practice, as I mentioned, from the intake form to the follow-up, what do I say to a client after I'm finished, and the importance of clarity of communication, and how do I give them tools, what can they do in between sessions, and learning how to do that in a way that's very positively impactful for the client makes a huge difference in your practice, in referrals, example, and ongoing care. So these are very valuable tools. I felt like we were really missing out when we don't understand them or we don't know how to use them.
Yeah. And it can be, I find therapists kind of get stuck in the doubt of what they're actually doing is even working. And until they start seeing results, but yet they're still doubting. And I think that whole kind of package of thinking about things differently and kind of coming from a more professional basis and understanding that what we're doing is going to work, and those nuances that back that up, is going to be so transformative for people.
Well, I think essentially the practitioner can be a placebo or a nocebo based on their own impression of what it is that they're doing, rather they apply it in their own life. Their ability to observe a potential is huge for a client. And again, when we doubt our own abilities or we doubt our tools, it definitely transfers to the client in a negative way, and it can shut down the possibility. But at the same time, we can also be a placebo. we can, in our attitude and our focus, initiate healing before we do anything. Just simply because our practice, in the way that we've built it from ground up, essentially, and the way that we approach what we do, that attitude and that observation has as much impact and sometimes as our actual tools of technique. So these are incredible secrets, really. It's the superpower of the practitioner. And oftentimes people would say to me, how is it that you've built such a busy and successful practice? And I spent a lot of time thinking about what is it that I do differently. And I even interviewed some of my clients. I asked them, what is your experience? What is it that I do that makes you come back? And so many of them highlighted the tools that I teach in this class. So the way that I communicated to them, the way that I taught them what to observe after a session, the way that I showed them their body's ability to heal, and a constant measurement of healing. And they said they would leave the office with such hope. And I think that at the end of the day, that's one of the most important aspects of the capacity to heal, is just the awareness that healing is possible. Yeah. And it's possible for each and every one of us. We're in a constant state of healing. But a lot of times, our Western approaches to medicine can be somewhat symptom focused, and we lose the awareness of the process of healing or the observation that healing is occurring. And so it's a very different approach that I hold in my practice, and it's been successful for years. So it was something that I really wanted to put down on paper and be able to relay to other practitioners, so they too can have that waiting list practice and really I would say not just have, but see and experience the ultimate outcome, or very positive outcomes for their clients. Because ultimately, when our client heals, so do we.
Yeah, beautiful. And it's such a blessing and an honor to be there for a client in that transformation and follow their journey.
It certainly is. Yeah. I think that, one of the things that's interesting about this class for energy medicine practitioners is that we also understand the power of our observation, and that in many ways that's our main tool when we're working energetically in that paradigm. It's about the ability to observe potential or priority. And this class really teaches you the science behind that. Why is that so impactful? Mm-hmm. And I've heard from so many of my students who've taken the class so far, is it's really given them a whole new appreciation of what they do, and they're approaching their practice from a totally different standpoint. And it's also, the positive feedback in terms of how much they've enjoyed their practice at a different level now in incorporating these tools has been wonderful to hear.
Beautiful. So the course itself, what are we kind of step us through is it 2 days? But
it's 2 full days, depending on what time zone I'm teaching it in these days. Sometimes we split it up into 3, just depending on the time zone. But it's essentially about 16 hours of contact time or lecture time. And in this 2 days, we're covering the 5 main tools of the practitioner. So those would be things like observation, communication, education of the client or empowerment of the client, evaluation, and environment. So we're looking at those 5 key components of practice and how we can incorporate these quantum concepts, and really also just the logistics of applying these concepts and the tools that we use. So we're going to cover, the intake interview and intake form, which is so underused by practitioners, regardless of modality. And in fact, the research that I did in my dissertation proved that this was such an impactful time for the client. Before treatment even began, we had the opportunity to either make them better or worse with this 10 minutes of engagement. And so we're going to spend time on that. I'm going to talk a lot about the tool of evaluation and a variety of ways you can bring evaluation into practice, not from a diagnostic standpoint, but from a before and after type of standpoint, where we can continue to observe healing occurring. And we'll talk about the science behind that. What does it mean for a client when they see that the body is healing right now? And boy, when you understand that, I think you'll never want to practice without some type of tool, an easy tool that you can show change, because it excites not only the client, but the practitioner. And we'll talk about, the optimal environment for healing, whether you're working in a physical office or you're working remotely, which is really the case for a lot of practitioners in a lot of modalities now, is that we're learning how to incorporate technology. So, even then, looking at the logistics of that and the environment for that and how it impacts the client. The tools of empowerment, again, how do we communicate with the client to give them tools that when they leave the office, they begin to apply these concepts in their own life. And, because most of us are with our client for a short period of time, and they're with themselves the rest of the time, making decisions and experiencing their life in a certain way that can either promote health or impede health. And so the ability to give our client tools to continue the work, I think, is not only important for the outcome, but for the client's sense of empowerment in their own health and engagement in their own healing. And again, communication, such a big one, right? How do we communicate in a way where we can literally be a placebo, that our words can affect healing? And I think that's such a juicy area of study. And boy, the whole class could be just about that. But depending on the student audience and from class to class, I try to tailor it to their modalities as well and give them tools to use specifically in their focus in their practice.
Yeah. Well, as a Mindscape instructor, and for those of you who don't know what that is, about training people's intent and focus and tuning into people across the planet, for me, I just trust my intuition 100% when I'm working with a client. The weird things that pop out of my mouth, and I'm like, why on earth am I saying that? And then, oh, it's amazing you said that. It's like, but even in the communication, it's so powerful, the words you use.
Incredible. Yeah, absolutely incredible. And I think, that's, I spend quite a bit of time on the concept of placebo and nocebo in this course because, boy, that's undeniable effect. And really, it's the belief effect is what that is, right? So what does the client believe? And ultimately, we can influence that in a very positive way or a very negative way as a practitioner. And when we realize that is at play, I don't understand why we don't do everything we can in our practice to elicit the placebo effect, because it is so much more powerful than the treatment in many ways. It's the ultimate key, if you will, to that client's capacity to heal. And so in this class, I'm really talking about how we can elicit that placebo effect right from the beginning, right from the get-go, and all the way through practice, because it is so powerful. And the client's belief that they can heal, the client's belief in you as a practitioner and your tools of practice are huge. And, it really comes down to how we present them. And those are the tools of the practitioner.
Yeah, brilliant. I'm excited. I'm so excited about this course. So students are really going to leave with like the full package of knowing how to communicate, knowing how to present themselves, do the no placebo thing.
Absolutely. I mean, my goal as a teacher, no matter what I'm teaching, is to give my students gems that they can apply into their practice the very next day after class. Yeah. And, this is a way of kind of revamping practice for a lot of people. For students who are just starting out, it's giving them the framework to set up their practice. For advanced practitioners, I think it really teaches us to maybe look at our tools a different way. And that's been a wonderful feedback from many students of mine who've been in practice for a while, who've said, I never really thought of it that way. And that's really changed how I'm approaching what I'm doing. So I think that's wonderful to hear. And as you said, students will come out with lots of new tools they can apply instantly. And I recommend to my students, start with one new tool. Every client that week, you apply that new tool. And then next week, let's add another thing. So it's not overwhelming in terms of resetting how we practice, but in fact, it's just giving us all of these new ideas that we can start to apply with the understanding of what the impact is.
Beautiful. Love it. Excited. So this is available to anyone who works in a kind of professional healthcare background.
Exactly. Yep. It's the only prerequisite that you are a healthcare practitioner or a student of healthcare. A lot of times students have not yet certified in their field. They're in their study at the moment. They can still attend as well.
Cool. Excellent. So that's a lot of people.
It is. It is. I think, and from a Western perspective, often right now we have an unsustainable system of healthcare. And we have challenges to our healthcare system like we've never seen before, where even medical doctors are having to shift how they're working with their clients. And when I performed my research and created the course in the beginning, it was really with Western medicine in mind as well, because here we have a model where billions of dollars are spent every year on technology, but what could we do from the ground up that would impact a positive outcome that doesn't cost billions of dollars and that exists for every practitioner in practice? So simple rules or tools rather that we can apply that have a positive impact without a huge financial outlay to incorporate these new things.
Yeah, which would be good for everybody.
Yes.
Yeah. Cool. Excited. So have you got any, I know you haven't taught this much. Have you got any feedback from the students? I mean, you're an outstanding instructor. I mean, I've taken loads of classes with you. I love you. But if you taught, how many times have you taught this so far now?
We've just launched it this year, actually. Well, we were ready to launch it just before COVID hit. So it took a couple months to get it off the ground. We had to move things around a little until we figured out the new paradigm of teaching. And so I've taught it twice now. I have several classes lined up this year and into next year. And the feedback has been fantastic. It's been interesting to see because I've had brand new practitioners who are just setting up their practice to practitioners who've been in practice for years. And the feedback has been fantastic. It's really helped to highlight that it's given these students a new way to look at their practice, as I mentioned, new tools to incorporate as soon as they left the class. And the feedback has been they've been excited about those tools. I think sometimes when we take classes about professionalism or ethics, we go, ugh. But in fact, this is looking at these concepts from a very different standpoint. Not something we should do and we should do it because of this, but something we want to do because we understand what the impact is on the outcome for the client, and that these are very valuable tools, that can be working for you right from the beginning, and I think every professional in practice wants to have a full clientele, who doesn't want to have a waiting list in their clientele, but even more importantly, to see positive outcome and continued positive outcome from client to client to client. So that has definitely been the feedback so far from students. I am setting up a mentoring program going forward in the fall as well for students who want to continue on a month-to-month basis, just working with these individual tools. And I had over the years many students who want to shadow me in my practice, but it becomes very difficult because I travel so much to teach, and so, or I used to. So in this case, I felt like it was a very helpful ongoing experience to be able to do a monthly 2-hour connection of lecture and some troubleshooting tips and some things to incorporate within the next month. And then we meet up again and discuss that. So that's starting up again in the fall. We're just confirming some dates and we'll be announcing those shortly.
Beautiful. Perfect. Mm-hmm. So I'm excited. So we have got the class coming up in the UK. I'm organising it and I'm in the UK. But obviously, it's useful for time zones all over the place, the whole of Europe and South Africa even. They're at the same time.
Certainly.
As us, there's loads of you that could be coming. But we are running the Beyond Technique course on October the 1st, 2nd and 3rd. So it's a Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And we're running it from UK time, which at the moment is British summertime, from 12 p.m. to 6 p.m. So hopefully that will be good for everybody and good for Tracy as well, across the pond. So the price is $550 US, but we have an early bird date as always. Save some pennies, so you can save $50 and pay only $500 if you sign up by the 10th of September and pay by the 10th of September, clearly. And then we're going to do a treatment intensive on the Sunday, on October the 4th. So you're going to be doing treatments.
I am, virtually. Yes.
Yeah.
And it's a nice way to follow up that class, I think, because it gives you a sense of how it is that I incorporate these tools and working with clients. And, we have this wonderful opportunity at the moment where you'll see how I'm working at a distance and how I incorporate evaluation at a distance and how, really miraculous that becomes, even more so than in office. when we can see the body's capacity to change across, miles and or kilometers rather, and how incredible that is. So I think it gives many practitioners tools of how they might want to incorporate in their distance practice, or if they've never worked at a distance, giving them some tools of how to do that. I know even at this point in time, many of our Western medical doctors are doing teleconferencing with their clients, and so it's kind of an interesting day. I think it's a really nice follow-up to all of these tools and how I personally use them. I mentioned I'm a manual therapist, and I do all of that remotely at the moment, which is quite miraculous even to me. so it even will just give you a concept of how we can work with multiple modalities at a distance.
Beautiful. So we have 4 days of fun.
Yes.
Yes. And for the treatment intensive day, you can either, if you sign up and pay quickly, you can be one of the people that gets a session, or you can just pay to observe if you just want to hang out for the day. So I will pop all the links to everything somewhere with this video.
Excellent.
So thank you, Tracey. It's been awesome.
You're so welcome. Thank you so much for taking the time to invite me and interview.
Well, it's great to hear about the class in a little bit more depth. So anything else you want to share before we finish?
No, I would just say, how exciting it is for me to have this opportunity to share the things that I'm so passionate about, and, to see how many students that have taken the class who are interested in doing ongoing continued research. And it's an exciting time in medicine, and it's a whole new direction. It's definitely swinging the doors open for modalities where we work in this remote way. And I think, so many of us are on the crest of the wave of a new paradigm of medicine, and what a wonderful time to bring in these concepts, these quantum concepts that we can incorporate in practice. So I'm very excited as well. And thank you, Eloise, for coordinating this class.
Oh, my pleasure. Don't get to give you a physical hug, but we can do it virtually.
Absolutely.
We do everything else virtually. So. Beautiful. Well, thank you for your time. And please, if you've got any questions, drop me an email. I'll put my email address here, and we'll get this class on, and we'll see how many lives we can change, because it's that ripple effect. It's not just the students that come to the class, it's all of the people that they're going to work on moving forward, and that excites.
So exciting.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Eloise. See you in class.